We're here at the first day of DSEI, and I have here Dan Lindell, who is Director Combat Vehicles for BAE Systems, and we're right here looking at the mortar vehicle, but we'll be discussing the CV90 in general. So this is the 17th version of the CV90s?
Yeah, it's we have delivered 16 variants of the CV90 to customers. This will be the 16th, but we actually have 17 variants that are operational. One of the variants the Swedish Armed Forces designed and manufactured themselves. But this is the 17th, yes.
I remember seeing the first CV90s in exercises in Norway probably nearly 20 years ago. How has the vehicle actually developed over that period?
So we moved into the digitized era in the late 90s with the Swiss and Finnish Mark II configuration. But already in the Mark Is we started adding payload, and for Norway we had the first 30mm ATK guns and so on. So it has evolved a lot over the years, and ever since 92, 93 when we delivered the first vehicles to the Swedish Army, there's not 1 year where we have laid down the pen on the specification of the CV90.
You were saying before during the briefing that there was a version which was the first digitized IFV?
Correct. So the Swiss vehicle was the first digitized combat vehicle in the world. And then that was the Mark II. When the Mark III came in, the Dutch and the Danes, they utilized that backbone for more functionality, which meant we could do a lot more when we had that electronic architecture. So we actually used that favorable in the Mark III. For example, threat sharing for defensive aid suit. Totally integrated defensive aid suit into the BMS system. It was the first vehicle with an integrated BMS. And so on and so forth. So target-driven man-machine interface to reduce the cognitive load for the gunner to be a more lethal system. That's also where we started what we call the I-fighting concept, or the way to integrate systems to increase effectiveness and decrease cognitive load.
You were saying that this process seems to be driven by this users group. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about the origins of the user group and what it has actually done to make the vehicle more capable and easier to run for a small nation's militaries.
Yeah, so with the different mark shifts, a lot more capabilities are back compatible came onto the table, or the smorgasbord as we like to call it in Sweden. The users, of course, saw that it could benefit if they go together, because none of the users we have is a very large army or has very large budgets, but together they're strong. So, and there's a lot of technologies that have risen within the community. There is, Norway have been in locomotive for a couple of years. Now the Dutch are coming along with hard kill systems and anti-tank missiles, and we have Sweden with this variant build, and all of that comes up on the smorgasbord. So the users started that club or user group themselves with the 7 nations strong now, to keep track of what's going on, do some development together, trials, share experiences. I mean, they have accumulated more than 70,000 days in combat operations within 3 armies, being in Afghanistan and Liberia. Imagine being a newcomer, and the day one you're tapping into all that experience, and maintenance concepts, how to do LRU repairs and all of that. And of course, together we are strong, because we are also part of that community.
And where do you see the CV90 moving developing in the future?
So, I mean, with the latest generation of the drivetrain, which can add even more payload, we're now passing the 50%, where we have 50% of the actual gross vehicle weight being usable payload. But that, together with also the electronic architecture, the generation 4 of the electronic architecture, which is now on our benches in the system integration lab and so on, will take us to new levels of functionality. So we can show more real-time data now than we could even imagine just 5 years ago. So that will take us to new functionality levels with with electronic architecture. I think that is a key. But it also means that when you have that type of capability inside the vehicle, you have a modern digitized vehicle, that vehicle will also grow older faster compared to an all analog vehicle, although it can do a lot more. But that is also another reason for coming together, having obsolescence planning and so on, being more customers, having larger budgets, looking ahead.
Maybe you can tell us a bit about this particular variant then.
Sure. So this is CV90 Mjölner, or as the users in Sweden call them, GRKBV90, Granatkastar Pansarbandvagn 90. It's a lot easier to say Mjölner. So it's a twin barrel 120 millimeter mortar. It has 56 rounds in the turret magazine. It takes about 10 seconds to fire the first 10 rounds. It has 16 to 18 rounds maximum rate of fire, and 10 rounds sustained fire over time. It replenishes the magazine in 5 minutes, and it has the same mobility as the CV90 because it is the CV90. So the users are now asking, how short can you fire instead of how far? Because the mortar system is now just in the heels behind the main battle tanks and the CV90, supporting the infantry and armor.
And it also has can fire anti-tank rounds?
Yes, so it fires all 120 ammunition in the Swedish inventory, including the anti-armor Strix, yes. Correct, qualified.
And it's on the verge of being delivered to the Swedish Army.
So FMV and the Swedish military school now has them for qualification until next week, when they hand them over to the armed forces to start the training on conscripts. Training the trainers has already been done and is finalized. So the first delivery of the actual series vehicles are to take place next week. Correct.
Okay, well, thank you very much.